Glendale. Shit. Still only in Glendale. Every time I wake up, I think I'll be back in Silver Lake. Been here a week now, waiting for a video game. Getting noober. Every minute I sit in this room, I can feel myself getting more nubbly. And every minute, some 13-year-old squats in his mom's basement, getting leader. It's just about time I get up, give my opinion. Spec Ops: The Line. Spec Ops: The Line is a third-person military cover-based shooter, and it pretty much sticks to that formula. You're a guy, and you got some guns, and some buddies that follow you around, and you go from place to place, and you shoot all the guys, and you hide behind cars, and you're like, oh, shoot those guys. Then your buddies are all like, oh, help, I've been shot by those guys. And you're like, there you go, you're healed, now go shoot some guys. Then you and your buddies are all like, woo, good thing we shot those guys. The game has pretty standard weapons. You got a couple of rifles, some pistols, a shotgun or two, normal kind of shootery stuff. And your enemies are just kind of dudes. Sometimes it'll be a dude with a shotgun or sometimes a dude with a knife that runs at you for some reason, but they're all pretty much just dudes. Where the game tries to stand out, in at least the gameplay, is the sand mechanic. And I know you're like, what, sand mechanic? But because the setting of the game is the desert, there's a lot of sand around, and sand can actually be used to your advantage as a weapon sometimes. You can, see some guys standing underneath a bus, and you can shoot the glass, and all the sand falls. Oh, sand killed them. Or you'll be like, oh no, we're surrounded by dudes! Oh, sandstorm, now they can't see us, so we could shoot them all in the face, and they don't know. The sand manipulation mechanic is pretty interesting, but it's very scripted. There's very clearly spots where you use it, and spots where you just can't use it. While the gameplay is your standard, cookie-cutter, third-person cover-based shooter stuff that you would expect, it's the story of the game that tries to stand out. In Spec Ops, you play an American soldier, and like with a lot of these types of games, you would expect to walk around and play the story and be all like, woo, America! But with this story, it's more like,
are those civilians?
America? Spec Ops isn't just trying to be your everyday third-person shooter, it's trying to be a third-person shooter with emotion. The game's story definitely pulls some inspiration from Heart of Darkness or Apocalypse Now or Platoon or those gritty war movies. All of which makes the game seem like it's trying to be Gears of War, but with the impact and story of a BioShock. And while the story does a good job of getting away from just the we're the good guys, they're the bad guys, blow them all up structure that we're pretty much used to in video games, the end result is kind of mixed. A lot of the moments they're put in there for shock and oh, the horrors of war feel kind of forced at times. And the overall resolution shares too many similarities with a Doom fanfiction I once read. Besides the single player, the game also comes with a multiplayer mode, which is pretty bare bones at best. It's pretty much the basic amount of multiplayer you can put in a game. Like someone said, we need this much multiplayers, and that's what they put in. Spec Ops: The Line is interesting because it tries to be more than just your average shooter, but it doesn't become that much more. I mean, all the game stuff is average, game stuff. The story is interesting, not great. So overall, it's just kind of a bland game. I don't know. It's an interesting play. Maybe rent it or wait for it to drop down on Steam in 6 months for $23 or whatever it's gonna be. But as a game, day one purchase, no. Maybe later down the line you're like, oh hey, I found this in a bargain bin. But I don't think it's probably worth picking up.